job was to keep the family together, to keep the family a family, and therefore he should have gone. Presbyterian minister Edmund Clowney tells the true story of a young soldier missing in action during the Vietnam War. And his family, of course, was grieved, but they were also bereft of hope. And they did everything that they could through official channels to find out what had happened to their son. Well, they couldn't find out anything. And finally, his older brother flew from the United States all the way to Vietnam, and he went out to look for him. And he went out into the most extreme danger. He went into the jungles and the battlefields. He went searching for his younger brother. And it's said that he survived. He was never touched. And you know what? It was because both sides were just kind of in awe, right? They're filled with respect for this guy's quest. And many people simply called him just the brother. And that's what a true elder brother would have done. Right? That's what a true elder brother should have done. A true elder brother would have said, Father, my younger brother has played the fool. His life's in ruins, but I'm going to go. I'll go find him, and if I find him, I'll bring him back, and I'll bring him back into the family at my expense. And that's kind of the key, right? The father goes to the elder brother, and he says to him, my son, you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. Right? He's already divided up the property. The younger son's taken his share, right? And it's gone. And now everything the father owns is the elder brother's. It's all his, right? He's the only heir left. Every robe and every ring and every fattened calf, it all belongs to the elder brother. And so on the one hand, the restoration of the younger brother was free to him. It was grace to him. But it wasn't free to the elder brother. It came at enormous expense to the elder brother. And there's no way for the father to bring the younger brother back in except at the expense of the elder brother. And now, in order to show the Pharisees what they look like, in order to kind of lift up the mirror for the Pharisees so that they can see who they were in this story, the poor younger brother, he gets Pharisees for older brothers. But in our story, we don't, right? If we, kind of the collective human race, if we are the prodigal son, then we need an elder brother. And there's no way for the father to bring us back into the family, to bring us back to bring us back and to accept us and to clothe us, except at the expense of a true elder brother. And what kind of true elder brother would we need? We would need one who doesn't just go from America to Vietnam. We would need somebody who would go all the way from heaven to earth. And we'd need somebody who wasn't just willing to kind of pay out a finite amount of money. We need somebody who would be willing to pay our infinite, cosmic debt. And of course, we have him. That Jesus Christ was stripped naked on the cross so that he could be clothed, so that we could be clothed in a robe and the dignity of an office that we do not deserve. Right? That Jesus, he drank, right, the cup of eternal justice. Remember in the Garden of Gethsemane, let this cup pass from me. If it be your will, not my will but yours. And then he drinks the cup of eternal justice so that we can receive the cup of festival joy in the Father's feast. I mean, can you even absorb all of this, right? That we have the perfect elder brother, that we have the true elder brother in Jesus Christ, that the Father couldn't bring us back in except at the expense of the true elder brother. And he became, therefore, an exile for us. Right? You see, the true elder brother had to do one thing that the elder brother wouldn't have had to do in our story. Jesus says elsewhere in Matthew, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He's a wanderer. He wandered in the wilderness. He was crucified outside the gate. outside the gate like a sacrificial scapegoat. And when he dies, what does he say? He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And he experiences the ultimate exile. Why? So he could bring us, prodigal brothers and sisters, back home. Home. I don't know if you can see this picture, but it's worth looking up at some point. But I can't pronounce it in its original language, but the translation is Table of Hope. But not only in ancient times, but also today. How does this work? What do you do? What's the main way in which you have a homecoming? Bev was talking to the children earlier about a party. What do you do? What do you do at a family reunion? You eat, right? You just can't get around food. You got to eat, right? And in ancient times, the evening meal, it was the very center of family life, and it was also the center of community. And it often lasted all evening, right? It was this long and protracted thing. And you know what? It's kind of because the family was the main way to practice a lot of things. It was the main way to kind of practice intimacy and a flourishing and healthy family and community. It was the meal, it was in the meal that you could really kind of truly be at home. There, your body, of course, is getting what it needs, food, but your spirit and your soul and your heart are also getting what they need, right? There's laughter and there's information and there's support and there's relationship building. And so it's a place of physical and it's a place of emotional and spiritual and relational flourishing. And the great homecoming, the great reunion feast, right, is where no matter what else is wrong in our hearts, even for a second, we might feel at home, right? But then sometimes the moment passes and we've got to get up and go do the dishes, right? I mean, so you can have these moments of glorious closeness, but then you also have this time of kind of feels like reality sets in. And the Bible says that because of the work of our true elder brother, someday Jesus is going to make this world, his home again. And he's going to wipe away death and suffering and tears. And he's going to give us bodies that run and never are weary. And he's going to give love without parting. And he's going to give us an ultimate feast. And that's what we've got in the future, right? This ultimate homecoming feast. And so Jesus says, many will come from east and from the west, and they'll take their places in this feast with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. And that's our future, right? The greatest feast. The greatest time of fellowship, the greatest sense of well-being we've ever had spiritually, emotionally, physically, which virtually always happens at communal gatherings with dear friends over great food. And this is just a dim hint of our eternal future. When Jesus comes back and the Father falls on our neck and our true elder brother opens the door and carries us into that ultimate feast. And what kind of people would we be if we could kind of taste that? Right? It's in the future, but what if it was such a reality to our hearts and to our minds that we could almost feel the Father's kiss on our neck? We could almost feel the taste of that incredible food that will satiate all desire. What would it be like if that was real to us? And I think part of the answer is that we'd always have this quiet confidence. We wouldn't freak out over everything, right? We wouldn't freak out over anything. We wouldn't lose hope when we lost some of our personal wealth. We wouldn't lose hope when we received some personal criticism. We wouldn't be lost if a relationship broke up because we know about the ultimate homecoming feast. But how do we keep that ever before? How do we keep that real to us? Well, Jesus has given us a way, right? And it's called the Lord's Supper, right? The main thing that Jesus Christ gave us is to do this in remembrance of me. Do this because it represents everything that I've ever done and ever will do for you. Do this as a way of reuniting yourselves and re-energizing my salvation and what I've done. Do this as a way of kind of reconnecting to the wonderful, life-changing effects of the Father's welcome and your homecoming. And it's a meal, and it's the Lord's Supper. And that's the way that Jesus gave us most vividly and tangibly and most centrally to have a life-changing experience. And the effects of the Father's welcome and homecoming and the work of our true elder brother, they come into our lives and they can shape us now. And it works in at least two ways. The first way it works is it's a time of intimacy with Christ, right? I mean, see what the Father says to the elder brother, right? We had to celebrate. Why? Because my son was dead and now he's alive. And oh, how I want to have fellowship with my son who was dead and is alive. And guess what? We've got the ultimate son who was dead and is alive, right? And Jesus says, right, essentially at the community table, says, if you want to have fellowship with me, and if you want to remember me, and you remember is maybe, it's even a stronger word than we have it here in English. If you want to connect with me, if you want me to be real, then eat in faith. And so Jesus is present when we eat and drink in faith. I mean, you can't see him with your eyes, but he is present in a way that he's not there or available in some other venues and in some other ways. There's a special way that he's present here at the meal. And another way, a second way is that if that's true, then the very format, the very way we celebrate the Lord's Supper is forcing us to admit that the greatest moment of intimacy with Jesus is a communal event, right? It's a communal experience. The Lord's Supper is a homecoming feast, right? And that is by nature, by definition, communal. You don't go off into a corner and do it, right? Otherwise, it's not a feast. You can't have a feast by yourself. And Jesus is showing that if you want to have union with him, if we want to have the life-changing effects of the Father's welcome and the homecoming into our life now, then we receive it communally. We got to do it together. In a few moments when we celebrate, who is it that's likely to pass you the cup or pass you the bread? It's going to be a brother or a sister. Not me, not a minister, right? Basically, we give it to each other. And the implication, right, is that Jesus says strongly, if you want to be shaped by my salvation, you got to share life together. You got to eat together. You got to talk together. You got to confess sins together. You got to be accountable together. You've got to make decisions and consult together. You've got to learn and study together. You got to plunge yourself into community. Now, if you live like you are an island, if you live all unto yourself, then when you take the Lord's Supper, you're contradicting the way in which you live. Because the Lord's Supper says you cannot get changed except but that you share life. You've got to be part of a Christian community with whom you feast. You can't show the world who Jesus is except as a community. You can't really experience forgiveness and freedom except through community. You can't really deal with your idols, right? All these things, they're not just privately between you and God off in your corner. Salvation, Jesus says, effectively by leaving us the Lord's Supper, salvation is something you receive together through the sharing of life. And that's why community is so important. Right, the problem is, we're alienated from our true home, right? Unheimlichkeit, right? You made us for so much more than this. And this prayer, right? So awake the kingdom seed in us. So that's the problem. And the divine solution comes in the work of Jesus, our true elder brother. And when we participate in the Lord's Supper, we're participating in a communion with God and with each other. And it's a homecoming feast. It's killing the fattened calf. And we have to celebrate and be glad. And when we take the Lord's Supper, we're receiving God's grace. And we're also recommitting ourselves to living more like our true elder brother. Parks are wonderful places to visit for a few hours. But they're not places that generally people should live all the time, right? Anytime you read or hear on the news about a tent city in a park, usually